Hey, you're tuned in to Tech Talk with VLink, an award-winning podcast brought to you by VLink Inc.
Welcome to Tech Talk with VLink, where we explore how technology, data, and innovation are reshaping industries across the globe. I'm your host, Tracy Gardner, and today's episode takes us to a fascinating intersection of science, art, and analytics, the world of fragrance creation. I love this topic. Our guests today are Dr. Mansi Patney and Lauren Richards. Both are with Symrise, a global supplier of fragrances, flavorings, cosmetic active ingredients, and functional ingredients. Both Lauren and Mansi work in consumer and market intelligence for the scent and care segment. Mansi, Lauren, such a pleasure to have you guys on Tech Talk with VLink. Who doesn't love fragrance, especially as a woman? This is going to be so interesting. I'm so excited for the episode. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Well, Mansi, let's get started with you. Let's talk about the big picture. Symrise operates at the crossroads of art and science. So how does data actually play a role in crafting something as emotional and sensory as a fragrance?
So, Tracy, to be honest with you, data is at the heart of, creation on our side. Today, when we are looking into creating products or fragrances, no company can create products in isolation. It is so important to understand what consumers resonate with, what are their preferences. So, we collect consumer data. We rely on, our olfactive data, our behavioral data to make sure that whatever we are creating is resonant and relevant in the market. Because, let's be honest, if we're not relevant in the market, the clients are not going to look at us. Our clients are not going to look at us. And so, if I was to answer this very, very simply, consumer data helps us to understand what resonates with the consumers and why it is resonating. Market data helps us to understand where the demand landscape is, where to play, how to play, in order for us to grow the business. So, data is really driving the centricity of the business.
Yeah, as in many businesses, it definitely does. Lauren, let's bring you in here. Can you share a bit about the types of consumer insight data Symrise collects to understand what people around the world actually want from their scents?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Symrise, we really take a multidimensional approach to consumer insights. We do both traditional and more modern techniques, but we, collect both quantitative data. So that's things like liking scores, purchase behavior, and qualitative input as well. So this is more, where you get the emotional language from consumers, the depth, cultural associations, and then we also have sensory data as well. So these types of research really help us to decode not just what consumers like, but the why behind it and why they're drawn to these, specific olfactive profiles. So we really try to enrich the traditional like sniff testing with more disruption. So, we actually do play in spaces like neuroscience to really uncover deeper emotional drivers that the consumer doesn't really have to articulate. We can just measure it. So, this
That's
way
so
we
interesting.
this way we really truly understand, not just how a consumer feels, but we can then better predict how they'll actually behave in the market.
And Lauren, I imagine cultural context probably plays a big role. Like, let's say, for instance, a scent that evokes comfort in one country might actually mean luxury in another. I imagine that you guys deal with that a lot. How does Symrise use data to uncover and act on those regional and emotional differences?
Yeah, so first and foremost, from a corporate level, we function by global business units, which really, fosters this amazing collaboration across the globe. And we, as data analysts, really leverage a multitude of, global data. So we have global sensory panels, we have global benchmarking studies. If we do ethnographic research, we do that globally as well. And then also some, AI-powered sentiment analysis. So that helps us uncover more of the nuances is. But like you said, for example, we might find that a floral accord is perceived one way in fine fragrance, but then means something completely different in the world of home fragrance and candles. So, by mapping emotional associations consumers have, and getting specific to what they're evaluating, where they're evaluating it, we really help to guide our perfumery teams and create fragrances that are both honoring like local emotion, but maintaining that global relevance.
And Lauren, I want to put my request in right now. I want to be on a global sensory panel. I think that would be so fun.
Or we can take you through the screening after the call and see if you qualify.
Exactly. Well, Mansi, fragrance creation isn't just about creativity. It's deeply rooted in chemistry. And Symrise has databases probably full of molecules, scent profiles you've used in the past. How do you and your team leverage chemical in that olfactory data in your analytics process?
That's a fantastic question. So, if I have to break down the olfactive route, it essentially comes from two main data streams. One of that data stream essentially comes from our expert noses, or people who we call as creators of the fragrance, and they'll essentially classify these olfactive notes into family, subfamily, specifier. But at the back end of what a family subfamily specifier essentially looks like is chemicals, because ultimately we're a chemical company. And the second stream of olfactive data comes from how the consumers perceive it. And so it's very important for us to understand where these two streams of data converge versus where they diverge, because that is an inlet to a gold mine of insights that will help us refine the formulation. I'll give you an example. What is categorized as woody might be perceived as sensual by the consumers, right? So, in order for us to really decode what that sensuality looks like for a perfumer, it's the fragrance development managers that look into what those chemicals are together, or the ingredients are together from our databases that are driving that sensuality. And then we look at, whether that sensuality is actually driving the liking or inhibiting the liking. Based on whatever those insights are, we will relay that piece of information to our perfumers, our fragrance development managers, and they can then refine the formulation. So it's an amalgamation of, our databases from the ingredients, from consumer data, and from our expert noses. Yes.
And let's talk about how AI comes into play here, because everybody's, it's the hot buzzword now. I imagine you guys probably do use AI. How does predictive modeling help your team simulate or forecast how a new fragrance blend might be received, or even before physical testing?
So you said it right. It is reality. It is no more a dream. It is, helpful in the sense that it allows us to push our creative boundaries. So we have exclusive tools like Filera that complement what the perfumer does. It allows them to, think outside of box and really end up creating something that a human mind is not capable of. That in combination with their expertise, their intuition, allows us to uncover something new, something innovative, which again, sets us apart in the industry. The other way we are using AI is to, optimize fragrance formulation. Can we, refine formulas in such a way that it is less of ingredients, but still, improve the liking of that multiple ways we, instead of we touching AI touching us. That's how I look at it.
That's interesting. And Lauren, I imagine data, Mansi mentioned it, the data actually accelerates innovation or change, how perfumes and scientists collaborate during the creation process. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. It quickens the process, but then, as Mansi said, it also adds a little bit more depth in a way. AI isn't really set up for us within Symrise
Right.
to
Yeah.
replace anything in the process. It's adding new insight. And there, AI and data have really become our creative partners throughout the development process. It's really deepened the collaboration that we have, when we have those smelling sessions and aha moments between our perfumers and our fragrance development managers and us. We love to co-create. We love to blend, a perfumer's expert intuition with these smart insights from AI. And also, it's also just really creative, like adding AI into just, seeing perfumers collaborate together. I think that's something that is very unique within our organization. And, you just learn new perspective, not just from AI, but then also like learning from each other, to build on Mansi's sensual example, every perfumer might have their way to boost an impression of sensuality in their formulations. And it's just learning other people's perspectives. And, we have a perfumery school. And right now, actually in our New York penthouse, we have international colleagues that are on like short-term assignments here. So we're really continuously learning from around the globe as well. So it's really important to not take the human element outside of what we do within Symrise. But we do acknowledge that AI is really our partner too.
And speaking of the human side, Symrise gathers feedback, like you said, through focus groups, probably in-store testing, even online reviews. How do you combine quantitative feedback like preference ratings with qualitative input, like the emotional part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about telling a story and getting, the depth and the richness to complement, the statistics that we see. So, we really rely on this diverse range of data streams that we have internally to build that holistic understanding of the consumer usage experience. So when we use quant, and those metrics are really showing us what's working. So the intensity of the fragrance, the overall liking of the fragrance, the perception of how it makes you feel on first sniff. We also have performance indicators. So revealing more technical aspects of the fragrance. So is it powerful? How well does it diffuse? And if you can imagine, walking down the street and you're instantly captivated by a fragrance from someone just walking by, we've actually developed tools internally to really assess that lingering trail. We call it sillage, and we are able to measure that at multiple time points. So when we have, the quant data, the technical stuff, then the qualitative is really uncovering more about the why behind the numbers. So as I said, it really adds that level of depth and gives us this 360-degree perspective. So it really gives us, multiple views into the consumer, helps us refine formulations with more precision, because we want to make sure that they're not just resonating emotionally, they have to also resonate technically, because consumers want them to last long. Constant feedback is make it more powerful, make it more powerful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So really at
but
the
not
core
too
of our
overwhelming.
Not too overwhelming.
Powerful, but not overwhelming.
Yeah.
Some
So
people, you
something
walk
that
into the room and it's like, whew.
Something that I feel like I've learned in, all of the years I've been working on fine fragrance is, if we're doing an initial sniff test and a consumer says it's too strong, it's not necessarily about the fragrance strength. It's more about the character that they're smelling at that moment. Maybe there's something sharp sticking out. So I feel that, obviously callbacks when we assess strength and how well a fragrance has lasted on skin, for example, but that coupled with those technical tests that we do with, our fragrance development managers, as well as our applied research teams, that really helps us, nail that technical precision as well.
Yeah. And Mansi, can you walk us through how that feedback becomes part of the continuous improvement loop for fragrances? Go ahead and whatever you were going to say.
I was just going to, add to what Lauren was saying. All of what she mentioned is actually captured in our databases. So it's not like one form of information goes haywire. Every point of every consumer touch point that she's mentioned and the technical touch point becomes a data point that then goes into this continuous feedback that you were talking about. Let me give you an example of how this plays a very, very important role. We are constantly doing benchmarking studies, as Lauren mentioned. And now, if for those of your audiences that are not familiar with what a benchmarking study is, it's actually studying market samples right? As to why they are resonating. What is it about them that drives their purchase intent? So we have that exercise done on a routine basis in every category that we create fragrances for. How that helps us is that when we have a brief in house or when we are working on a project, we refer to that legacy data to help us come to a stronger starting point, if you will. So all of that continuous feedback that we've already received on some of the stronger performing fragrances in a category are then used as learnings to create a fragrance. Then, once that fragrance is created for a product, we then again go back to the consumers and ask them to evaluate. Okay, so that becomes another touch point with the consumers to understand, okay, where are we going in the right direction? Are we not going in the right direction? But in between all of this is the expert noses. A lot of times they will evaluate internally. Okay, here's a brief in house. Here's my olfactive space. Am I going in the right direction? So they pick on each other's nose to understand and to get that assurance that yes, we are headed in the right direction, because ultimately it is the culmination of, as Lauren mentioned, the creative touch point and the ultimate consumer who's going to interact with the fragrance. So it
There's
becomes a constant flow.
a lot more that goes into it than you guys think. And I mean, so many questions in my mind about your expert centers and smelling and that kind of stuff. Lauren, what external signals like fashion, lifestyle shifts, even social media sentiment are proving most powerful in predicting what consumers will want in the next big scent?
Yeah, so obviously trends and social media are really a gold mine for,
Yeah.
staying relevant, knowing what's, real time, but then also seeing what's going on for the future. So
Yeah, sure.
platforms like TikTok and Instagram are really revealing to us how consumers talk about scent, what they associate it with. Is it luxurious? Is it comfort? Is it freshness? Textures and colors on the runway are informing, package designs and whether we want a fragrance to possibly smell red, for example. So we monitor a ton of things. We even monitor Google search trends to see, like, okay, maybe they're not buying it yet, but are they searching for it? And how have those searches grown over time? So, we also work with content creators to put our fingers directly on the pulse of the market and really, get a sense for
Yeah.
potential virality. These signals help us anticipate, but then also, know the values that consumers want their fragrances to reflect as well. So just to give you an example from the benchmarking work that Mansi was referencing, data only gets us so far. It's not always perfect. So there's a lot of
Right.
intuition in it as well. So it's all about acceptable risks and knowing when the right moment is to launch a new trend. By
Right.
doing our benchmarking studies consistently, we can also see how the market is evolving in terms of, liking, and whether they're liking more, modern, pushing the envelope ingredients. So if you think about Angel by Mugler, that fragrance
Yeah.
took a long time to be like well liked. It's still very
Yeah.
polarizing, but like he was onto something, and it just took a little time. So with data, with intuition, and with patience, we can also help shape how the market's evolving as well.
Absolutely. Well, either of you can answer this one. Symrise has built teams of frameworks that make insights more accessible and actionable. What advice would you guys give to organizations trying to democratize data against creative or scientific functions? Not always perfect, as you said, but what advice would you give? Either one of you, Mansi or Lauren.
Lauren, you want to take a stab at it, or do you want me to?
Sure. Yeah. So, accessible, actionable, obviously. So our recommendation first and foremost would be to really build a shared language between creative and scientific teams. Ensuring data is clear to different audiences. We constantly just sit, with our teams, and you might have some new new people on the team or people coming in from different industries where they need more of like a fragrance education and more of an insights education. So we constantly have those touch points internally to make sure that what we're sharing is being received in the best and most accurate way possible. It is a delicate balance, right? Telling
It
these
is.
artists, chemists, scientists, but they're really artists, if you think about it, our perfumers and our fragrance development managers. And sometimes it can be tough to give rough feedback, but you have to articulate it in a way that, you are trying to perfect things and ensure, we win the project, ensure it's long lasting on the market. So when we can help our teams really understand that this data does matter, good or bad, they're really empowered to use it to help them drive their own work.
That's awesome. And Mansi, real quick, go ahead, Mansi. You have something to
No,
add?
no, you finish and I'll add.
I was just going to say, how do you foster that kind of curious, kind of data-driven culture that Lauren was referring to with a global organization like Symrise?
So I think the easiest way to do this, and we've constantly done this as part of our collaborative process, is to show examples where, data or learnings from the data hugely impacted the success of a previous brief or a project. Okay, that's when people do realize that it is important, and then
Mm-hmm.
um, data will only, as Lauren mentioned, data will only do so much. It's also making the teams believe that it is coming from a place of collaboration and not criticism. That's
Mm-hmm.
when, the belief in the data turns around, and they, look at you as a collaborative partner. Regardless of whether the data is good or bad, you have to win the person first before telling the news that this is what data is saying or telling.
Absolutely.
So I think building that trust, building that collaboration bridge is very, very important. And then democratizing data by making it accessible, by making it digestible. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very, very important that I've learned through the years I've been with the creative team, is that it means different things to different people. So you have
Yeah.
to speak their
Right.
language in order for them to digest. If I start
True.
if I start saying a lot more technical things, I know that I've lost my audience in the first 10 minutes. So I may have the best data, but if I don't speak their language, it's not going to benefit me, it's not going to benefit them. So knowing your audience, making sure that they understand the technicality behind the data is very, very important for you to make data a successful touch point in the product development process.
Yeah. What
And
really
you
well
know what?
said, Monty.
Yeah, both of you. So interesting. And we're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite scent? Each of you. Do you have one? Is it like vanilla? Is it woodsy? I mean, what is it? I'm just curious.
So I'm a big fan of vanilla fragrances and skin scents. So have you heard of what a skin
I've
scent
never heard
is?
of skin. I've never heard of
Okay.
skin scents.
So yeah, think about like a softer fragrance that you need to get what we would call like intimate sillage. You would need to
Yeah.
get really close to be able to smell it.
Oh,
And there are some formulations out there that are said to really blend well with your skin as well.
Yeah,
interesting. What about you, Manzi?
I also do not like over the top, loud sillage fragrances. So I'm also a big proponent of skin fragrances, but I do like a lot of woody fragrances.
Ah,
Uh,
I do
I
too.
don't I don't think so. It's fair for us to say the actual name because it may
Correct.
belong
Oh,
to
no, no. No, don't do that. Yeah, for
competitors.
sure. Yeah. But it's interesting. I think what you said is you don't want like scents that enter the room before you do. Like, 5 minutes before you enter a room, your scent is entering the room because you can smell them coming, right? You just want something subtle. That's what I like. So,
Yeah.
well, fascinating. Thank you so much. This has been such a fascinating conversation. Thanks you for giving us a peek into Symrise and how they use data, the psychology, and even AI to transform something as timeless as scent creation. It's been fascinating. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into Tech Talk with VLink. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your network. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
You're welcome.